this for a while, right? I have a couple, otherwise I go home. So fox hunting, which actually has nothing to do with foxes, so to speak, although in now, if you've noticed, we do have some foxes in the city. Is basically, Mark, if you go to the next one. We'll actually do a brief overview of kind of how we utilize fox hunting. For those of you who've been around, back in 2016, 2017, we did a basic form of fox hunting when Gary Skaggs actually did this on the Aries net, where he asked everybody to grab your handheld, go outside. I believe we were on the output frequency, and a lost person who had a car accident was going to be transmitting no voice, just simply a carrier. We were to then record the signal string at your location. And then during the net, we all basically gave Gary our signal string of that signal from the handheld, right? That way we didn't have any 60-foot tall antennas and no beams, the thing out there. And through that, over the period of the net, he charted off each of those reports on a map of Norman and our locations. We asked this location and your signal string. And we actually located, just doing that, the signal to a 1 square mile block. Which actually is pretty good considering, right? Because a lot of us were in town. So we can always use that to help find those situations, which are not as common anymore. People are carrying cell phones, cars have a lot of times a transponder in them. So we got a lot of things we can do nowadays. But it's nice to know that a simple form of transmitter hunting we can do even by just signal reports. So it can always come in handy. So that is one thing we can do, find the lost. We can also go through and find interference. If y'all live, and Mark will laugh when he starts hearing me talk about my travails with this one company called OG&E. We don't know what it stands for, but they say they energize life. I need to talk to them sometime because they don't energize my life as often as they should, or as repeated, reliable. But if you have a transformer that's making a whole lot of noise, and you've heard one of those, you know that it can really mess up your radio life. Luckily for us, because I'm not saying they're the most responsive company in the world, but they would actually come find this because if you have an arcing transformer that's making noise, that means they're losing money. So you're hitting the bottom line. So to report an arcing transmitter, something or noisy, they usually come out fairly quickly to check that, right? They can come in handy. You can also do that if you're just finding stuff around the neighborhood, you know, if you've got something going on, bad Christmas lights, unknown grow operation, all those kinds of things. So you can actually find interference, which comes in handy. The other, which we'll talk about today, is as a planned activity. Here in the US, if I listen to people who have been in the radio hobby for a while, this used to be much more common, right? We used to have periodic fox hunts. I've heard stories probably from Mark in the 80s where it was actually done at lunchtime. We'd have a group of guys going to lunch. They would put out the call that I'm going somewhere, I'm going to transmit, you find me. That's where we're going to eat lunch. Sounds like a great idea. Today, we probably wouldn't get to eat lunch because it takes too long, right? But it's a fun thing to do. Internationally, fox hunting is still a radio sport. I see more reports probably in Europe than anywhere else that they actually have organized club and intra-club, if not European competitions of fox hunting. And so it can be a planned activity, and that's where most of ours will do. We've done it on field days for several years. Bill probably did our last, well, I'll say the last one. I think I've done one after that, where we would basically, we're doing like field day at the Red Cross building. We would hide a transmitter, send your terminal face. You had to go find it. A lot of fun. We used to be able to do this a lot more easily. I would guarantee that in today's environment, if I went down to Lions Park and I put my little fox, which looks like a little gray box with flashing light and an antenna on it, I would probably have Norman Police Department, Norman Fire Department, and a bomb squad at the park in no time at all. So we're probably in an environment today where we can't do it as easy as we used to. Go through a fox and let's play with it, right? But we still can do some organized meets with a little more planning. If I wasn't your emergency backup plan, my action plan was to call OUPD and Norman PD, let them know what we're doing. So when I got calls that somebody just strapped a little gray box to something here on North Base, they realized it was just the club doing its event. But if you don't think about those things, you probably will the next time, because most likely they didn't go well. So today it takes a little more structured purpose and intention to get one started. How many would be interested in doing a fox hunt? We can really work on it. I've got a couple ideas. Take a little bit of planning, but I think we can do it without getting the city man at us. Next slide, Mark. So the big question is, what do you need to go fox hunting? You'll see some of those with a variety of antennas, and there are all kinds of things you can find. I can find ways for you to spend lots of money on different fox hunting equipment out there. So that would be fun little toys to have. You got the budget. But the first thing you're going to need is a portable radio. I usually have one of my ASU handhelds or another handheld of some sort ready to go. You can use like a portable radio, like the ASU 817s, 818s. And other small form factors radios that a lot of times are battery operated internally. You can throw around your neck and wear. But you do want a portable radio. This is not something you're going to carry your 7300 around in a battery, unless you have a little red wagon. I guess we do have Mark's wagon, but it'd be kind of fun to do. The other thing we need is it's really handy to have a directional antenna. We're going to talk about how to do with a non-directional antenna. But if you got a directional antenna like our club kit, tape measure Yagi, those come in very handy for a variety of purposes. Mark, do we have any of those kits still around?
We got a whole box full.
Oh, and we have kits. Get them while they're there because they seem to move pretty quick. So that really comes in handy. The other caveat of this is when you build one, make sure you think about adapters. If you're new to the hobby, what they tell you, but you don't really believe at first, is you will start off with a handheld. And somehow over the next several years, you will end up with this whole herd of handhelds that you've purchased. And you find yourself with at least a half a dozen handhelds, all with different antenna connectors, and you'll always grab the wrong one. So make sure you got adapters. Most of the standards for fox hunting stuff, get into it commercially, will go to BNC. So if you have a handheld, get your SMA to BNC, convert adapter. They're cheap, they're inexpensive by all means, easy to get a hold of, and they'll save you a lot of frustration.
Get them on Amazon.
Yes, you didn't buy them. If you try to buy one, don't buy one. You need at least 4. Go ahead. One is never the answer.
Right, buy them all.
Yeah. The other thing to think out is when you're looking at his, with this antenna kit, it's not bad because you've got that pigtail of coax. But when you stop think about that, you're going to be holding a handheld in one hand, maybe an antenna in another. So think about having some coax in between so that you don't tear up your radio, break a connector, or get really frustrated holding your antenna and your radio together as a unit, right? So directional antenna is very handy. The other thing we'll talk about is attenuators. We'll talk about that when we start about hunting. Attenuators will make your life much easier. There are ways to attenuate a signal without these, but you'll find over time these will save you some time and frustration. And also you'll need a fox. A fox, it's pretty simple. The company I'm aware of the most that sells them is a company called Bionics. You can find them BYONICS at bionics.com. They can have bigger versions like this one. They also have one. We have a club box that I don't think we've seen since this room remodel, but it's in here somewhere, unfortunately not turned on. That is very small, about size, it would fit into a film canister. So they make them very small, up to larger sizes. And if you really want to get creative, you can purchase a device, a little board that you basically can turn any other handheld into a fox and control it remotely. And that's, well, that's about a $70 option, so it's not terribly expensive. As to what they sound like, if you have a radio on you, you have your handhelds. If you go to 146.88, the repeater is still down on top of the blender, but on the output frequency, I've got this Fox running. You'll hear the Fox, it'll play out a signal. I think I've got now to play for 15 seconds. Wait 30 seconds, play it again. You'll hear the series of tones and my call sign.
What did you say?
146.88. I'll tell you what it sounds like here. Demonstrate. Hopefully. Wait about 30 seconds, you always catch it and get out. So there's we have is what Fox is going to sound like. Most Foxes you can program to change that tone. That is obviously not my creation, sort of Nintendo-esque, but you can actually set them up for different periods. How often do you want it to sound? What tone series you want to play? You know, we change call sign on it. When we do club operations, you're going to hear it'll say degree 5 NOR. A lot of times if we do a club activity, we put that on the repeater output frequencies and we're all here doing it on field day. So that's what a Fox sounds like. And you can make it more or less difficult. If you want to challenge people, do it a 5-second tone burst and shuts off for a minute or two, then you have more time to think about what you heard, but you'll have less time to do what about it. Mark, give me the next slide. Let's talk about hunting with an omnidirectional antenna. Have y'all hunted before with just a regular omni antenna? One of the things you're going to find is a problem is you'll walk outside and you're going to hear the Fox, but you won't know where it's coming from, right? You need some directionality. What's the one thing we have on us that's always a good attenuator?
Body, your body.
That's right. Or in Star Trek terms, big ugly bags of water, right? So you can hold a handheld up against you and you become sort of a big knoll behind you and you can sort of move around slowly and get your basic general direction of how it goes out.
Yeah.
Gives you direction, you'll keep moving, you'll be hearing it, but you'll find the ultimate problem, which I learned easily the first time I did this, because it was a field day, I had a group of kids follow me because they thought I knew what I was doing because I was old. And as you get closer to the Fox, you'll find that it comes from everywhere. The signal will get strong enough. This is a 1/2 watt Fox, most of them run around that. When you get close enough to it, you start losing directionality. Signal's strong, right? So you can do this, move around, but if you're actually close enough, that's not enough of an attenuator. So you can go through and desensitize or detune your antenna. If you're carrying one of the signal sticks with night gnaw, obviously they will bend quite easily. You can tie them into knots, and you can actually start detuning your antenna to the signal. That way it'll be loudest as you're pointing toward it because you're obviously keeping it from working as effectively. I've actually, the day with kids, found out that you can actually just loosen your antenna somewhat, make a less good connection, and you can also detune it that way. And that would help you find it as you tune in. The other thing is always to keep your eyes peeled. If I hide a Fox here on North Base, honestly, you know, it's probably not laying on the ground somewhere because, you know, why would I do that, right? So it's going to be on something that's probably a tree or some other little obstacle. Hence the bomb squad thing.
Yeah.
So you can always sort of use your eyes and see what is the most likely choice. But don't forget, you can do this perfectly fine, but you have to learn to desensitize your antenna. And detune. Any questions on that? Makes it seem very logical, right? Not a problem. I don't sell signal sticks, but I do recommend them because they are quite handy. Because you use the balls as one antenna I could tie into a nice little knot, off my pocket and keep the antenna on there. The other best practice if you're doing with this is to take your handheld and put it into a non-transmit mode. A lot of handhelds will turn transmitting off. I'd say it's a safety thing. I call it best practice. One thing you wanna do is you're taking off antennas and stuff. You don't wanna actually key up. I think on a handheld, you're not really gonna harm your handheld that much. But honestly, if the price of handhelds down nowadays, don't take chances. Those things are stupid expensive. So I call it the best practice, just simply turn it off if able to. Directional antenna is always the best, and we have the kits. How much are the kits, Mark?
$20.
So for $20, you can build one of these, and I just heard this morning, Chris will tell you that these can be built by a 10-year-old. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't always correlate to a 60-year-old actually doing it. But at the same time, they're not hard to build. The only tricky piece to me is testing your soldering skills on the one big solder. And that's mainly because you have a painted surface, you're gonna have to take the paint off of it and work on soldering it up. There's usually somebody in the club who's got experience on doing it. Elmer night is always a good night. So this really comes in handy. If y'all know Victor, K5EL, lives on the west side of town. He also keeps one of these in his attic. He does not fox them with it, but he has it pointed at our repeater. And when on a stormy night, he'll actually disconnect his outdoor VHF antenna up on a tower, or one time now on a pole. And he'll simply switch over to this coming out of his attic in the garage, pointing at the antenna, pointing at the repeater, and has no problems. It's his storm antenna. I've done it on nights, not in the attic, but actually to sit up in the room. My wife looked at me like I was kind of crazy, but it worked really well. Okay. So you can always use these. The other benefit of the tape measure antenna is you're easy to detune. You can start folding your elements in. She's not quite as effective, which is exactly what you're looking for. So these come in really handy just because they're very, very easy to detune. And they come apart, so they're easy to travel with. So it comes in handy. You can also find antennas that obviously commercially made. They have some advantages. This is a Fox antenna. Oh, yeah, Arrow, Fox antenna. This is what happens when you have sinus range, can't think. So the Arrow antenna has a variety of makes and models. This one actually breaks down, so it's backpackable. But it also has the UHF elements, so it's a dual band. So you can find these will take up to, I think this model will hold up to 50 watts, although I'm not so sure I want to be holding to do that, but it comes in quite handy. Not as easy to detune, but they are as good antennas. You also have an option, and they're great for satellite work, right?
No reflector?
In this case, I've got this thing loosened up.
And
I have used this with the HT here to get the International Space Station several times. Just this.
So, yeah, this is their design, keep design, and they do not have an extra element back. Their other one is a log periodic, which is ELF antennas. And I don't know about this now. Have you used an ELF? Nope. But they can be used also. Again, BNC connectors, make sure you got your connectors up there right. But any kind of little directional antenna is going to help you out. You could probably do this with I have not tried this because I don't own one yet. Is a little 2-meter magnetic loop. Can you try this? Because they have, they're fairly directional, got a good null. Yeah. One day, I want to try that. I would recommend touching it while transmitting. Any questions on directional antennas? Right, they're not expensive, $20, and honestly, that's pretty much just the cost of parts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Attenuators. If you're going to go to all that trouble, it's nice to have a series of attenuators, and then fuel. Mark, go to the next one, Mark. We should have one with photos, or the photos showing up differently. We have fixed attenuators. This is a couple of attenuators, a 20 dB and a 30 dB attenuator. They simply tie into SMA connectors. You can put them together, so you can use it as a 20, a 30, or a 50. You put this in line, just to attenuate that signal. More effective than a big ugly bag of water, right? So it comes in handy sometimes, just simply to cut that signal down. So these come in handy, these aren't too expensive, Bionic sells them, I'm sure there are plenty of other places who sell small attenuators. And they come in a variety of forms, these are fixed. You can also get a stepped attenuator. Next slide. Which is a cute little attenuator that again fits in line with your antenna, and you have settings for 5 dB, 10, 20, and 30, and you can have combinations thereof and activate more than one. So it gives you a little more ability to attenuate, very easy to use. The thing to think about is simply how it's going to be held in line. So if you have a handheld, you probably do not want to screw this onto here and then put your antenna on top of that, because you're going to increase the leverage it's on your antenna connector. And again, see that comment about the cost of handhelds today. You probably would want to put that on a pigtail somewhere and know how you're going to carry it. But they're fairly sturdy, they've covered the board, so you're not going to hurt it too easily. But come in really handy. The third option you commonly find is an active attenuator. Yes, I own too much crap for fox hunting that I probably don't need. But you put in line and simply take this and you tune your radio to 1 megahertz away from it. And then you have a knob that you can turn and actually go back down to it basically tunes your antenna. So you're going to tune back down to the frequency of the fox. And then as you need to decrease the strength of the signal, you simply turn away, turn the knob continuously, and turn away from the fox. It gives you a nice smooth transition of what you're going to do. These are not terribly expensive, but they do use your typical CR 2032 battery. Comes in handy. But you don't just tie to the top of your radio necessarily. And it comes in the point where you've got a radio and an antenna in one hand potentially, and you need to turn a knob. So sometimes fox hunting is great to do 2-man teams. One year, I think it was Wayne and I, then we did a fox hunt here on field day. And I would say a 2-man team probably worked best. You had one person holding a radio, looking at signal strength, another working the antenna. So it works really well. So it comes in handy. There's a variety of good attenuators. You can find all these at bionics.com. I'm sure again there are other sources back then. Bionics is the only one I think that I was really aware of. So I didn't go shopping too much because they had everything I could want right there on one side, right? So there are some good ways to do it. The other thing you can do when you talk about is simply arrays. If y'all remember Phil's 4 antenna array that he had to put on his truck.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, he had 4 antennas on a, I'm not thinking wood, it was down on something. He was set up on his truck and he could switch between the two, if I remember right. And actually start being able to, he had 2 phased, verticals. And he could simply do that, and he's really pretty good at it. And I've seen another version that Mark exposed me to, and I will regret this one of these days, is a one called the Kraken STR, Kraken STR. And for a nice healthy $500, you get a board. You will need to buy 5 antennas, lips, and a Raspberry Pi. They've developed this for a 4. I would think it would work on a 5 or a similar board. And a handheld device like a phone to run the software. And basically you put it up there and it uses that array. You can drive along, it will sit there sampling the signal, and it will pinpoint the location and display it on your device or your computer. Sounds like cheating, I know at times, but there are times I would love to have one of these, like when we're trying to find a dog barker. Because it's really hard to sit there and be in the right spot, holding an antenna, waiting for somebody to have their dog barking on the radio. Y'all remember the dog barker?
Yeah.
For those who are new, we've got somebody in the area who has a radio set up incorrectly, luckily. That has probably voice activation turned on, and when the dog starts barking, he activates the radio. As far as we know, the dog is not licensed and is not giving his call sign. So we try to find a page, but by the time you grab a device and start to look to it, it stops. So it is still an issue of trying to find those types of interference, only because honestly, you have to be in the right place at the right time. But it'd be handy. So that's a nice device. Apparently, and I've given you some more research on it. Mark, you said that the, it'll also give you a location just based on phase. Are you pulling it up?
Yeah.
To show my budget.
Oh, no. It'll also do to the cloud piece where you can link some of these and they show a heat map. So you can, as you drive around or as you're moving around, we think it'll work off like a tower structure. And if it is, I'm gonna have to get one. And then if we do an interference problem, we'll put it up on the tower and let it locate the place. There is a gentleman, K5DV, who could not make it this morning, but he has one of these devices and he's got it used up and has done it to chase some things down. And we're actually gonna use him for the Memorial Marathon. Because we always have somebody who's playing with us.
Right.
And he's gonna go around trying to find the bad guys. And Tulsa area has. So there's a big linked repeater network, and there's always some guy on there that'll key the mic and say BR549. And drive, has anybody heard the guy?
Yeah.
And drive, and drive the folks in Tulsa crazy. We're gonna try to chase those guys. They're not armed yet. I mean, the Kraken doesn't have a weapon. No, that's the thing they added. And they,
You can put the Kraken on a robot dog and have it rolling around.
now you're talking.
Yeah, you think the price of handheld is high, what if somebody steals your dog? So those are the basics of fox hunting, and obviously a nice short presentation, which you get for an emergency one. But we will set up an event here soon, and if y'all are interested. Weekends best for most people. Okay, because I've got a plan to maybe set one up. I'll put it somewhere in Norman. I'll give you a basic locale, and so you're not, it's East Norman, West Norman, Central Norman, wherever, North Norman. And give you an idea of where to go start looking and maybe run. That fox will run for about 20 hours on half duty. I can probably change that a little bit and make it last a little longer. But then find a way and run it for a couple of days, we'll do like daylight hours only. And set it up so we can run it for a while, so we get a chance to play and practice. That sounds good. Okay, we'll do that. I'll try to send out something to the newsletter or something, or across one of the computers. And we'll have an activity. They're kind of fun. As long as you don't have the police chasing down, because you're out there with the antenna. Snooping. Any questions? That's fox hunting 101. Very useful tool. It can come in handy. However, how many people remember the Phil recliner 06 machine night? When he fell asleep in the recliner, his mic fell into the side of the recliner. As he fell asleep, it activated the mic. And he was on the air for several hours.
Snoring.
Yes, snoring. We tried to find, we found him actually fox hunting. This is where I really found out just how strong. When you're dealing with a half watt, that's one thing. Phil's putting out 50. So my house, I could even get reflections off things and still hear him full scale, right? So it becomes more of a challenge. That's why I bought the active ones to see how it works. So it comes in handy, but we did finally cut him down. Although I think it was actually, we knew.
The TV he was watching.
And yeah, on why it said Phil, I don't know. But it was one of those things where there are club members that have that great of a signal that are close to me aren't that many people, right? So I had, I thought that probably Phil would be a good candidate. Then Mark called him, I could hear the phone ringing. We pretty much knew that was gonna be him. And he woke up a little while later.
The phone didn't wake him.
No, he did not. He did not talk in his sleep either, so.
The cat probably woke.
A good chance. So there are some fun times you can have with them. I have not tried the lunch thing on the lunch Wednesdays.
Galen has a story. Hospital,
Yeah,
how long was that transmitting? A week, 2 weeks?
yeah, I was gonna say, it was quite a long time.
There was a hospital in Oklahoma City, we didn't know it was a hospital. There was a transmitter in Oklahoma City on some frequency, I don't remember what it was, 8.2 or something. And they chased it down, same kind of thing. They finally said, all right, enough of this stuff. Found it was at a hospital somewhere. Do you remember which one it was?
It was,
Deaconess.
Where?
Deaconess.
Deaconess, and it was one of those, it's coming from the hospital, and it's coming from inside the house. And the guy from Oklahoma City found that it was there at Deaconess, and it was one of those, well, shoot, anybody know anybody at Deaconess? And Galen went, I'm gonna call. And bam, you heard somebody scramble to the microphone going, rats, and it went off. Something of that nature.
I don't know, did we ever find out the make and model of that radio? Cause it transmitted forever.
It
But
was,
obviously good
it was an
radio.
icon radio, I don't remember which one.
Probably one of those ones that FEMA handed out in 2009 or something.
Yeah, and it was pumping 50 watts out for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
My current hobby is welding, that would be a good welder.
They vary in cost from around remember right, the $35 mark up through $80 to $100 if you get the high end ones. This was sort of in the middle. I think this was like when I bought mine, it's been several years now, it's like $39, about a $40 one. It wasn't that bad because you start using these, they pay for themselves pretty quick to do entertainment.
Yes, everyone can order a trial.
Again, they're fully, you can program them. There's on Bionic's website, they have a online web-based configuration. You think I can read that one here? That's the scary part. Yes. Oh, so they've gone up in price, then everything go up. So you have these combinations which will cost you some more money. They have cases and batteries. If you scroll down, the club has one of these Microfox 15 somewhere. So the 15 milliwatt, it fits in a plastic tube. The biggest problem with those is the fittings on the top and bottom of the tube uses a 9-volt battery. The fittings are just friction fit plastic. And I think what we turn on that one is after several field days, it gets loose and doesn't stick in there as well. So you have to kind of watch it or tape it. Ours is probably taped currently. You've got the 15S, which will use a small LiPo battery and fit in what I call 35 millimeter film canister. I mentioned that to somebody not too long ago who was younger than 30, and they had no idea what I was talking about. 35 millimeter film canister. It's like, thank you for that old reminder. Then you've got the Pycon, I believe is this gray one. And they have gone up in price, or what had gone up in price. The USB combos is what that is, so it's now $165. Wow. Nice to know it's gone up in price. I don't think they've changed a whole lot. And there is if you go to the page on it, you'll find that a new web-based configuration tool. You just plug it in and it uses, there's a tricky part of programming them. It is a little port that you have to go through and plug a USB to just a jack, a funnel jack, which fits in there quite easily, but you have to remember to get them seated well. So usually there's a problem is because you don't seat them well in there. So it's probably the biggest challenge you got in the whole thing. But Bionics has a lot of stuff. You can spend a lot of money there if you want to. Apparently more than I thought. Good things.
Never had them on.
No, it's first rule, second rule radio, I guess, is when you start buying stuff, do not ever go back and add up what you. It's really depressing.
Don't let your wife.
Yeah. Yeah. And she,
got locked out of.
yeah, mine would volunteer at the time. Any other questions, Wayne?
So another really question you just wanted to add, I was thinking, as far as the antennas go, you can get pretty creative too. Doesn't necessarily have to be resonant, as long as you can pick up the signal. I was attending a Fox in San Antonio, Texas, where they're very innovative down there. And there's this guy that took a metal trash can with it, drilled a hole in the center with a PNC connector and it popped the rubber duck in. And it became a directional antenna. And we Fox on it with that. So there's all kinds of ideas out there which you can just get real creative with. And they work. As long as you can hear the signals.
Right, that was what the, 39 or a class back in 2016 was the antenna rule. That every antenna is a compromise, which means everything will work as an antenna. And you hear all kinds of stories, people loading up, walking sticks or lawn chairs or bed springs, whatever actually working. It seems like I heard a McDonald's story that somebody even loaded up a light bulb and actually was able to communicate, got a contact in Norman in the McDonald's using a light bulb. That sounds like a combat thing.
Yeah. That is a comment, it is a light bulb antenna.
Yeah.
Lauren loaded up his leg. Yeah.
He had an artificial leg.
An aluminum leg. Shut fed the leg, yeah. Spun it around backwards, so it pointing up.
Which is gotta be a bit more violent.
Yeah, that gets you points at McDonald's.
Any other questions? If not, I will give it, we'll schedule a Fox Hunt, it's kind of fun. Antenna kits up here, if you want one of the antenna build kits for the Yagis, they hold up quite well. This one's actually been folded up in a decent sized mode in the house for, it stays there since when we built these in 2016 or 17.
Yeah.
So it's done quite well, and then they come apart. I have to keep mine together, but the bend was due to a black Labrador who kind of thought that she ought to play with them.
Oh, hard and characteristics.
They did. Yeah. Yeah, I think it popped her in the face too, and that challenged the world. But other than that, it works well. If no other questions, Rodney, I'll give this back to you.
We'll take a 5-minute break.